Hi everyone, and welcome to tutorial 1 of the FPL Masterclass. Absolutely can't thank you enough for all your support. I've been absolutely blown away by the reaction since I launched the Masterclass last week, earlier this week I should say. So I'm really excited about starting this first tutorial with you and getting ourselves underway. This tutorial, here it is, here's the prep that I've been doing. It's called Training for a Marathon. How to approach your FPL season. So what I'm going to go into here is some of the more strategic elements about how I think you need to approach the game as we come towards game week 1. As I said in the bio for the FPL Masterclass, what this isn't about is giving you the answers, because there's no fun in that, right? That's pretty boring. So what I'm going to talk about is just some of the areas I think you need to be thinking about and where you need to be applying yourself in the next couple of weeks as we build up towards the start of the new season. So the first thing I think managers need to do, and we all need to get our heads around, is get the winning mindset right in your head and understand how valuable, even though we get a couple of thousand of them, that those points are, those FPL points. 1 point might not feel very much in game week 1. You've got, 38 game weeks left to make it back if you lose it. But believe you me, you can win titles on a handful of points. So those little points by the end of the season, when you've only got 1 or 2 game weeks left, they are really incredibly valuable. So it is so important that we treat them as absolute gold and really look after those points. So once we've got that mindset, the next mindset we need to look at is something that I call marginal gains. So that is the concept of squeezing every single ounce of likelihood in us getting a positive result, getting that in our favour, looking at all the tiny areas where we can get a win throughout the season. How we do that, in my view, is understanding the game. So too many managers, I don't think, actually understand the game of fantasy football. So what is the fantasy football game? It's a game of probability. So the better you predict the outcome of matches and the better you predict which players within those matches are going to perform well to a set of criteria, the better your team's going to do. So once we've understood that we're focused on the points, they're our number one thing to get, and we understand that the game is a game of probability, we can start to unpick and unravel how we can get some marginal gains to help boost our score. So where do you start? It's the start of the season, you're getting ready for game week 1, you go out and pick a great team, right? That's all you need to do. Wrong. What you need to do is something very straightforward, and it staggers me how many managers don't do this or don't know this off the top of my head. You need to go out and read the rules. And I'm talking to experienced FPL managers, I'm talking to people that haven't played for a number of years. I read the rules for the new season's game. They look pretty much the same to me. There may be a slight tweak on the assist. So if you read the definition of an assist, I don't remember there being something there last season about 2 touches off a defender. Have a look when you go look at the rules. But what I'm saying here is, if you don't understand the rules and the scoring metric and how the game actually works, how can you possibly pick a team that's going to do well? So what we're talking here is the rules are here, your team selection's here, and the actual game is here. So we're starting way back at the beginning, and I think so many managers just jump to this bit, or they go through the rule bit too fast and they don't actually take it all in. So if you don't know things like scoring, how the chips work, how the BPS, or the bonus scores work, so things like how many points somebody gets for an open play cross or how many points a defender gets for an interception, this is the level of detail that I think you need to look at to get those marginal gains. Do you understand how the price changes work? Does that make sense to you? Again, really get your head around that quickly. It's another marginal gain that you can get. This is easy stuff that's there for everybody, but so many people miss it. A big change in the game is the chips, and a big change in recent years is the way the rules around the wildcards work. So people who've played the game long enough will actually remember when there used to only be 1 wildcard, so that's going back quite a while, but now you get 2. What they did originally was bring in the January wildcard that was only available in the January transfer window, and you used to have another wildcard that you could use at any time. So logically, it would be an idea to set up your team in the summer for game week 1, work all the way through to Christmas, change up your team again in the transfer window, and change up your team again for the run-in when there's double game weeks. The dynamic of the game has now changed, and of course you'd get this if you read and applied the rules. It makes sense now, there's argument, and very strong argument, to play one of your 2 wildcards quite early in the season. So what I'm not saying here is set up a game week 1 team with a plan of playing your wildcard definitely in game week 3 or definitely in game week 4. I'll come on to why you mustn't do that later. But what it does mean is that you can change your mindset and your focus of game week 1, which is no longer needing to plan for so long. You can pick out a team that is focused purely on maybe the initial, 0 to 10 game weeks, something like that. So the other thing I talked about there was scoring. So it's really quite simple fantasy football. Or the FPL, you get points for playing in a match, goals, assists, clean sheets, and that leads to bonus. So if you look at the 11 best, or the FPL team of the season from last year, it's littered with star names. And there's one name that absolutely sticks out to me, or sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's Pascal Gross. How has he made it into the top 11, the 11 best players in the FPL, or the team of the season? And the answer is quite simple. Apply that scoring metric. Does he play every week? Yes. Does he play over 60 minutes? Yes. Does he play in a role that allows him to score goals? Yes. Assists? Yes. And does he play in a team that does keep clean sheets? Well, Brighton kept quite a number of clean sheets, particularly at home, which trickles in as a midfielder, the extra point every week. Factor all that stuff into the pot, and Gross, of course, was benefiting from lots of bonus points. So you've got the perfect storm there. He is the perfect recipe player. As an example, I'm not saying go out and buy Pascal Gross immediately for this season, but I'm making the distinction between applying the rules to the actual game. He is a brilliant example of the sorts of players that if we could have 11 of those, that would be absolutely fantastic. So if we apply that formula and those rules and our interpretation of the rules next to the fixtures, we can now start trying to figure out where can we find the people that fit the Pascal Gross model or criteria, as I said there, but also have some brilliant fixtures that are going to give them a positive chance of getting wins, and teams that win matches mean players score high points, and the whole thing revolves around that metric. So next question managers need to ask. So people say to me, what would you consider as a good start to the season? So this is like asking a marathon runner, what is a good start to the race? So the answer to that question isn't, well, by the 3rd mile of a 26-mile race, I'd be in first position. That isn't what they're looking to do. The likelihood is the people that are at the front of the race in the marathon have probably burned quite a bit of energy. And to put that in an FPL perspective, have probably burned maybe some of their chips already to boost up that score. It's pretty unlikely you can get to the front of the queue in the FPL, the top of the leaderboard after 2 or 3 weeks if you're not going to be relying on other things like playing your bench boost or your triple captain, that sort of thing. So I think there's 4 things that we need to take from a marathon runner and apply it into FPL. So the first thing is the prep, so the preparation. So a marathon runner, they'll have a good diet, they'll have good equipment, they'll have some good training. So for us as FPL managers, that's things like I've talked about there, about reading the rules and understanding the scoring system. But it's also things about doing our research. So I do this every season. It'll come out on about the 1st of August, going by 442 magazine, and with it will come a supplement which has all the teams' fixtures in. You can do this by printing something off the internet the same. You don't need to buy that magazine, but I like it because it's all in one little booklet. And I just go through it with a pen, and I just mark down the little runs of fixtures teams get. So let's say, let's take Bournemouth, for example. If they had Fulham at home, Cardiff away, Huddersfield at home, and then Watford away. That to me might be a nice little run, so I'll just mark it down, and it means that I can refer back to that booklet when I'm sat at home, or I'm sat in the bath, or whatever it is. I'm waiting for somebody to come pick me up. I've got a couple of minutes. I can just look at my little booklet, and I'm always aware of which teams have some good fixtures coming up. It also allows you for game week 1 to actually plan out and work out, hey, this team might not have a great start to the season, but wow, look, game week 4, they've got 5 really good games in a row. It's a very simple and very easy way of doing it. What other prep can we do? I think it's important, and this goes throughout the season, you need to do 2 things. You need to have a facility to be able to watch all the highlights of the Premiership games. So in the UK, that's of course match of the day, so you need to book that into your weekly slot to make sure you're at least, if you're not watching the games live, you're at least able to watch the highlights. So wherever you are in the world, the equivalent facility to do that. The other thing you should be doing is reading, I believe, a broadsheet newspaper, so you can get all that information online. But typically the quality of the information, this is perhaps more valuable for match reports, but also previews and really high quality sports journalists putting their viewpoint on different teams. The other thing where I think you can get some awesome information, and if you don't do this, do it already, go out and get a Twitter account. It doesn't need to be a personal one. I have one that I don't tweet anything to. On that account, I just follow all the sports journalists, or follow the local journalists from Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester, London, the journalist that is affiliated or attached to each of the Premier League teams. That is a really valuable source of information where you can get really juicy snippets right from the heartbeat of where that club is. So you know, if it's the guy who's actually in Newcastle, stood in Newcastle as we speak, next to St James's Park, getting that information, how valuable and useful is that? So that's your prep. Your next thing we talked about in a marathon, they will look for the position in the race. So in FPL, the marathon runner probably doesn't want to be way out in front because they've probably burned so much energy. They don't want to be way out at the back. So in FPL, as long as you are what I'd call in with the pack after a few weeks, so you get in with the pack by not taking too many risks, just following a nice steady rhythm and building yourself into the season. The next thing we need, and a marathon runner will have, is control. So this builds on our position. If we've got control, so let's use that wildcard example. What we don't want to do in game week 1 is say, right, I'm definitely going to play my wildcard in game week 3. And we reach game week 3, and there may be a couple of players that we had our eye on. Maybe they've been injured and they're not due back for a couple of weeks, or maybe some of the guys we put in our team in game week 1, they were perhaps reserve players, and now they're the star player, particularly guys coming back from the World Cup. Perhaps they're back and they've lost their place in the team, and suddenly your great plan has all unravelled and you've lost control, and it means you have to go out and play your wild card. What we want to do is to have the option of playing our wild card. We might think, I'm gonna play an early wild card this year, but we get to game week 3 and our team's doing brilliant. We're doing really good, and we think, well, no, I'm just going to hang on here for a while, and I'm going to let this play out for a few weeks. This wildcard could be valuable and useful down the line. That's what I mean by being in control, and there's a big difference between losing control and having control. Finally, the next thing a marathon runner will have, they'll have a good start to the race. An FPL manager will have a strong start to the season, but they'll have a plan. They will know what they're going to do next. So use that fixture and list, or that fixture analogy I was saying. Be aware. So I've looked. I know, for example, Tottenham's fixtures go pretty good from game week 5. I was looking at this just yesterday, so I know in the back of my mind maybe that would be a good time if I was thinking about people like Harry Kane or Eriksen or Ben Davies or any of the great Tottenham players. I also noticed that during that time Liverpool's fixtures take a turn for the worse. So you can see here where perhaps some of my thoughts are going already. I've got a kind of plan. I've also planned beyond that. I've looked at whose fixtures start getting good around game weeks 8, 9, 10, etc. So I've got a really clear understanding of how I can make a good start and then build on from there. Okay, what do these good players look like? So who are these people that we're going to try and put in our team? So when obviously at the start of the season, what we don't have is any data, so we don't have any information. It's not like when you make a transfer move in December, for example, and you've got 10 to 20 game weeks of data and information to compare and contrast with. So what we're looking at here, when we normally make a decision, we have over here, we have what has happened in the past, we have what we think is going to happen, and then we have what actually happens. Whereas in pre-season, we don't have this column, we don't have what's happened in the past, other than in previous years. We just have what we think is going to happen. So if you take Mahrez, for example, if he was still at Leicester, we'd be able to go, well, what has happened? He was pretty good for the last couple of years. We don't know if he's on form at the minute because he's not played for ages, but he's probably going to be in the Leicester team. So what we think will happen is he'll play in the Leicester team and play a very important role there. So based on his fixtures, we can kind of figure out approximately how well he's going to do. You now try and apply that to Man City. He's now gone to Man City. That analogy is impossible because we don't even know if he's going to be in the Man City team. So what that means is, in my view, at the start of the season, because we want to be in control and we want to have a solid start and we want to have a plan, just like that marathon runner, we need to go for certainties. So we need to look at players that are definitely playing in their team and or most 99% likely to be playing in the team. The other reason that's important is getting a load of points. Brilliant. It's also good for price rises. So referring right back to looking at the rules, if players do well, lots of other managers will sign them and bring them in. Their values go up. Then by the end of the season, your team value will have gone up. That means when you come to April time and you look at doing that second wild card, you've got a lot more value than the competition. It's got another advantage, which is if you've already got some of the players that everybody else wants to buy in the first few weeks, you can then focus your attention further on. So just like the marathon analogy, you're able to plan. Your plan is better. You're planning for the next move, whilst these guys, your competition, are all one step behind. They're planning to catch up where you already are, whereas you're already one step ahead. So it's really important you get certainties, because if they're not in the team and they're not playing, they ain't going to score any points. So pick the guys that are going to be on the pitch. Is there value in the promoted teams? Definitely, and there has been year after year after year. I can remember people like Charlie Adam, Andy Carroll, when he was at Newcastle. They burst onto the scene in the first few weeks and got loads and loads of points. The guys at Brighton last year did really well. Losel at Huddersfield did really, really well. Tom Heaton a few years ago for Burnley, I think he was the top goalie when they first came up. So, Wolves, I think, are a real interesting one. They've got players that are a lot better than I'd expect from promoted teams. They've got some real stars, and Jimenez, for example, was signed in the pre-season, a Mexican international. Cardiff have a manager notorious for his tight defence, so whilst I'm not saying go and pick a Cardiff defender as first choice, could be some great value in your squad for a room for a Cardiff guy. I think we need to be careful with new managers. The new Chelsea manager, the new Arsenal manager. I'm not a huge follower of European football, so I don't know what their system is. We may get an insight into that for Chelsea with the Community Shield, which is always valuable, but tread a bit carefully. I mean, again, wildcard, really helpful. You might want to use those first few weeks as a sort of try before you buy, and then you come in with your wildcard when you're confident who is playing well in that Chelsea team. Alonso, for example, might not be as attacking as he was previously, particularly if the manager doesn't play three centre halves. Really interesting one this year is the transfer window. That ends about 24 hours, maybe a little more before game week 1 begins. Totally new dynamic for the game. How are managers going to cope with that? The answer is you need a really good plan. But as with FPL, you need to be fluid and you need to be willing to be flexible with that plan. In some instances in FPL, you need to rip your plan completely up, put it in the bin, and write it all again. But with that one, you need to be ready to pounce on players that maybe represent good value or big stars that come into the teams. But remember, go for certainties, because you want players that are definitely going to play. So if in doubt, don't get them. A couple of final things. Friendlies. People get a bit excited because player X has scored a hat-trick in a friendly against Boreham Wood or somebody like that. I don't read too much into it. The other mistake people make is they say player Y from the youth team has played left back for the whole of pre-season. He's only 4 million. I'm going to put him in my team, and then they're really disappointed when the regular left back, who's an established pro, is there at the start of the season. I think that the stars always get picked, and sometimes if they miss pre-season, it might just be because they've had a small injury or they've been rested or whatever it might be. They might be fatigued. Just don't get too excited about the friendlies. They're just fitness matches, really, I think. And the final thing, the biggest thing we're looking for when we talk about what do these players look like is value. We want value. So if you get if you get Salah and Harry Kane, you've already eaten into a lot of your budget. So what we're looking to find here is players that represent a box ticking exercise because they fill that Pascal Gross criteria of playing all the time and returning the points as per the scoring system, but also they don't cost the earth or within their bracket they represent good value. So what value means to me is it means that you can have a player, but it also means you've got capability to improve your team elsewhere. So it's no good having Salah and Kane and then a completely hopeless defence or a hopeless midfield. You need balance throughout that squad, or certainly throughout your first 11. You can probably have some budget options on the bench as cover. You don't really want to put loads of expensive people on the bench. That's another thing to think about. Invest your money into the people on the pitch, not the guys sat twiddling the thumbs, sat on your bench. So look for value. That's really important. So to wrap this up, in conclusion, do your preparation. There's the 4 things. Remember the 4 things. Prep. So do your homework. Read the rules. Have some quality research. Control. So we want you to back certainties so you're the one making the decision when to play your wildcard, for example, or when to use your chips, or when to make a move. Your position versus others overall and in your mini leagues. Don't take risks. You don't need to take them early on. Just stay in the race, stay in the running, stay with the pace setters. That's absolutely fine. And plan. Have a exit strategy. Have an out ball. Have whatever you want to call it. Have a vision so you know where you're going in the next, not just week, but in the next few weeks. And I don't mean completely plan your whole team. I just mean know approximately which teams you could jump to, or which of your players, your incumbents, are going to encounter a tricky run of games or whatever that might be. And then the final thing to remember is every team's different. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all. The reason I'm doing these tutorials as I am is everybody has different playing styles, everybody has different players, everybody has different opinions. So apply this strategy, but don't worry if when you come to release your team on game week 1, your team looks totally different to everybody else's. That's good. That's what it should do. If you're going to win and do well, we can't all have the same teams, because otherwise nobody's going to score any higher than others. But as long as you're applying these strategies and fitting them into your thinking, then you're going to do really, really well. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you again for all your support. Really excited to be doing this for you guys. I can't believe the reception. I'm really blown away. So thank you, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Cheers.